So this first question is for Melissa. So how did you come to know Christ, and has your relationship with Christ been influenced by the circumstances surrounding your life?
That's a great question. So, do you guys need me to repeat the question for people who couldn't hear it online? Okay.
No, because
We're
that's
good?
why we gave him the microphone.
Okay.
So they could hear it online.
I'm also an old teacher, by the way, so I have a little bit of that in me that I can't ever get rid of. I always tell people I've known Jesus ever since I can remember. I can't think of a time that I didn't know. That was one of my favorite parts about my mom and dad. So I'm adopted. My mom and dad raised me to know Christ from my youngest age and really raised me with a heart of forgiveness and mercy that I didn't even quite understand until I learned my story when I was 14 years old. Like many survivors, when I found out my story at 14, I really wrestled with God. I knew that He spared my life. I knew that He had a purpose and a plan for me, but I was in so much pain, and I was angry and resentful and scared and all of those things that you can imagine. And I made a lot of mistakes in the midst of my pain, and I'm always really honest with that, about all of that, especially with young people, because you may not know what it's like to survive an abortion. But all of you can probably relate to what it's like to go through something so painful in your life that you want to run away. You want to run away from the truth, and sometimes you want to run away from God. And that's what I wanted to do. And so I ended up developing an eating disorder, alcohol abuse, you name a poor choice. I probably made it in the midst of my pain. And the more I sinned, the more I wanted to run away from God. And I think many people know what that's like. But I love that in the midst of that, God never left my side. And that's how I got to be here tonight, because God never left my side, and He allowed me to forgive my biological parents and start to heal. And I can tell you that those moments of darkness led me to a place of such a beautiful relationship with Him, and I am forever grateful for that, because it allows me to minister to other people now in the world. And so my relationship with Christ is what gets me up every day. It's my heartbeat, right? It's the purpose and the plan for me. This is why I don't ever give up. And trust me, there are days where I think, man, I cannot do this. And I know that it's never me. It's all about Him.
Amen. Thank you. I want to pose a question from our virtual audience. Okay, and I think this one you guys can both take, or maybe Michael wants to handle it. So we talk about the immense support needed for a young, unwed, pregnant mother. But what can the local church do for the family that she's part of? The family supporting the pregnant mom are often presented with circumstances surrounding the pregnancy that include maybe lies, deceit, hurt, complexities, all that impact how their loved one is dealing with it and how they're dealing with it. How do we help the family?
Yeah, a lot of these situations are complicated and complex. That's why, as the church, you talk about, we all have different abilities, we all have different capacities. You know, talk about the arms and the legs of the fingers of Christ here. There are a lot of things that we can do to help those families. There's a lot of different counseling things. There's a lot of, different ways to step in and help them through, which is going to be a challenging situation, like we said, not just for the mother's about to have a child unexpectedly, but for that family around them. And I think as much as possible, and I mentioned before talking about what are the talents and resources that you have, anything in the church. Is it a job situation? Is there mental health issues involved? All those different things. Look at how you can help and how you can serve, and look at it as a church, what types of ministries you need to help those families adapt as best as possible. But more than ever, they just need surrounding love and support. What do you need? Be a willingness to help in whatever way is needed, I think, is what we need to do to surround those families. Melissa, maybe. Yeah.
Well, and I'll jump in really quickly. Part of my story, too, is I found out my story at 14 because my older sister had an unplanned pregnancy as a high school student. And so when Michael is talking about being willing and jumping in, that's exactly what we did as our family. I would often pick my nephew up from the babysitter. My sister would stay after school, and she'd come to my classroom and say, hey, could you go pick him up? It meant that, sometimes she needed somebody to help tutor her so she could finish school on time. It meant that, yes, she needed somebody to babysit. It meant that maybe that wasn't always my parents, right? The list could go on, but it meant that we jumped in and we did whatever it was that we could do to be a support to my sister and to my nephew. And I can tell you that that made a positive impact, not only on my nephew's life, but hers too.
Thanks, Melissa. Also, whoever asked that question, if you email our office at info@Anglicans for Life, I have a great book that we can recommend to you. Okay, we have another question here. Is there one from the audience this way? I want to do kind of back and forth. Any other? Okay, then I'll ask another virtual question. All right, how teens here are asking what to expect. What are pregnancy centers and adoption agencies? How are they going to be prepared, and how do we help them if Roe is overturned? Isn't everybody going to be inundated with pregnant women? And when you realize that we're dealing with almost 1 million abortions a year, we're going to be needing to help 1 million women. That was my addition. So, any ideas, guys? How can we be ready for the flood? The church.
I'm not sure if we are completely ready yet, but we have at least 6 months. That's so let's start there. And I think we need to think about the things we are doing right, what pregnancy resource centers are doing, and then we need to scale up. And how do we do that? And I think the church needs to focus hard, talk to your local centers and say, okay, we know how many abortions roughly are in the state of Virginia or in Pennsylvania. We got to realize that that's going to come down significantly because women are like, I can't have an abortion now. So we need to find ways to support them. How many more, and this getting the nerdy numbers, but how many more women are we going to be expecting to have to serve? And so what do we need to do to ramp up our efforts so that we can help those women when they need it? And I don't know if enough centers, enough groups are focused on that, but if Dobbs is overturns Roe, we talked this before, at least 19 states, abortion is practically illegal overnight. We need to get ready for that.
Okay, any question from the audience? Okay, I see somebody up front here. Good thing I worked out.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. What could advocacy and really policy look like when you're trying to advocate for the protection of life in states like California, where they're advocating to be a abortion century state if Roe is overturned?
So what can we do with policies for some state like California that wants to become known as the abortion center of the country? What do you do there?
You want that one, Michael?
Are we talking, if you're in California, what do you do? Okay, well, I think, all right, you're going to have a lot of people coming in there for abortion in California. Having lived in California for about 8 years of my life, passing by places like Planned Parenthood Express, there definitely is a culture there that, it's very permissive, and you'll have a lot of people going for abortions. I think it's incumbent too in that area where abortion is very legal, and for churches to be present, not only around understand how these women are coming to these centers, try to find a way to intervene before they get there as a church. I know the first pregnancy resource center I worked at was a block away from Planned Parenthood. That wasn't by accident, that was intentional. So church needs to find a place to step in where they can help. And we talked about the law. Abortion rate has actually come down quite a bit nationally. And I think part of that is because of the good work that pregnancy help centers and other groups are doing to help build that sort of culture of life. We always talk about, how, the law is instructive and moral, and a good law needs a society to back that up. I think one of the reasons why we're on the verge of overturning Roe right now is I think that culture of life is really growing, and people are ready to see Roe overturned. But yeah, I would just say kind of intervene where people are going to come into those centers, find that way to intercept them, and again, surround them with as much love and support as you can.
And don't be discouraged. We have plans already in the works in California to make sure that even if the laws are the way they are, we're not going to stop working to change hearts and minds. That governor isn't going to tell me what I can educate the people of California about. And so that's where you come in every single day, regardless of the policy stance that they are taking in California. You can have conversations with people and educate them and convert them. And that ultimately leads us back to a place where policy can change someday. So don't forget that either.
Melissa, a couple of questions have come in about the impact of the saline on your body. Can you share a little bit of how you've physically had to live with it?
Yeah, that's a hard question for people. You don't really know how to ask an abortion survivor, what did it do to you, right? It's okay. You can ask me that, though. When I survived that abortion, I weighed a little less than 3 pounds. I suffered from severe respiratory problems, seizures. They thought I had a fatal heart defect initially because I was under so much distress. And so they thought I was going to suffer from multiple disabilities throughout my life. What I can tell you is that I am pretty healthy overall. I do have some immunodeficiency issues, and I can tell you I see this in my population of abortion survivors. And I guess the brief version of it would be this. Babies in the womb experience the stress their moms go through. We even saw them talking about that during the pandemic, that they were afraid of the stress that babies were under. So think about the stress that babies in the womb are under when their moms are in crisis. Then think about the stress that babies go through, like me, when we're also being subjected to an abortion procedure. We have stress upon stress. And so it manifests itself in many different ways, but it's like chronic stress issues, fatigue, chronic pain. For me, it just means that my body, as much as I can probably outlast a lot of people doing the work that I do, I also, when I get really sick, I get really, really sick. And so I've had shingles like 12 times. I'm sort of a champion. That's okay.
Yikes.
If that's it, I'll take it.
Okay, the next question has to do with how do you respond to people who push for abortion rights in cases of rape? It's always the tough one. There is a group out there.
Listen, I could talk about this stuff all day, as people have figured out. Go, Michael, go.
Oh, okay. All right. I would say, did the child do anything wrong? I think that's where you start with. Rape is understandably a very difficult thing. I have a daughter. You know, if someone raped her, oh my goodness, I would, hell hath no fury. But I, you know, there's a child involved there, and you always the axiom, there's no two wrongs don't make a right, that's, I mean, it's as simple as that, really. Not that it's simple in what you're dealing with here, but that's what you have to keep in mind.
Yeah, the other piece that I would add to that, too, is to let people know abortion doesn't undo the trauma of rape. It adds an additional trauma. There's a group out there called Save the One. If you don't know Rebecca Kiesling and her team, they are great at advocating for people like them who are conceived in rape or incest or are targeted for abortion because of a poor health condition in utero.
Thank guys. Okay, one last question, and this one is a sweet one. How do you spread the love of Christ with a pregnant woman who is full of shame? How do you be a voice for the unborn while also supporting and loving the mother?
I can start, and then I'll let Michael finish. We'll do it differently this time. You are sending a message without even saying a word sometimes. Do you know what I mean? People will know when they meet you how you really feel about them. And I can tell you, people are watching your social media. They're watching what you say and do all of the time. And so people will know the love of Christ without you even speaking a word. So be so mindful of that in every interaction that you're having. Because when you're mindful of that, then people will see the love of Christ before you even utter a word to them.
And I would say is that, get comfortable being uncomfortable. I think as Christians, I think we like certain things a certain way, and certainly there's values and morals that are put forth there. But I think you have to be able to really fundamentally just realize there's a person that needs to be loved there. It doesn't matter what someone else says, that someone else thinks. There's only one person you're accountable to. And as long as you're pleasing that person and serving that other person, that's all that matters.